It raises taxes on families, seniors, and small businesses who are financially stressed already. However, I am mostly against this budget because it weaponizes my money against me. You have already made up your minds. So I ask the public, do you want your taxes going to any DEI or ESG program sponsored by this county? Do you want your money used towards any environmental initiative or the Mid-America Regional Council or KC Climate Clan? Should you pay for tampons in the men's bathroom in our public libraries? You want to give your incentives to a foreign company like Panasonic or big developers who get their taxes deferred. This budget supports our electronic voting system. Think about ChatGPT. Do you trust anything that comes out of a machine hooked up to the internet? This budget supports the health department, where the mask and vax mandates the county enacted during COVID in keeping with the healthcare oath to first do no harm. Commissioners, I believe your economic judgment is poor. Your financial discernment is strictly political. Despite all your spending, this community has gotten more dangerous and more expensive to live in. Commissioner Myers, you are my commissioner, but you don't represent me. Commissioner Allenbrand, you are a Democrat who campaigns as a Republican. You signed this budget today, and it'll seal your political fates in 2024. That's not a threat, it's just the truth. You will lose, but the biggest loser is going to be you, because you're going to lose your majority. So pass this budget today on the backs of all the 95% of the people in this county you think supports you, but you do it at the risk of your own political futures.
Next is Debbie Detmer.
Hi, I'm Debbie Detmer, a 3rd Congressional Kansas GOP delegate. Ronald Reagan said, the scariest 11 words you'll ever hear, I am the government, I am here to help. To expand on what Shara had to say, on the PowerPoint budget presentation by the Johnson County Budget Committee, the $347 million is the projected revenue for the property or ad valorem tax on page 4. On page 8, they have a pie chart showing you where that revenue will be distributed. Now, what they have failed to reveal to the public is the revenue they pull in from the sale of the general obligation bonds, which is an auction on the Securities and Exchange Commission internationally. The bonds are bundled together and sold as book entry securities. The most recent offering was issued July 20th, 23, and a total amount of $71.5 million. This is an auction on bond market and sales price based on the rating of the bonds. You see, the people of Johnson County are good little taxpayers, so Johnson County has a high rating, which means the bonds are safe and will probably not default. The bonds have mature values based on when they are redeemed or cashed or traded. Per the public offering, the general obligation bonds payable from unlimited ad valorem taxes. So you guys can add as much money as you want to this bond. You, in good faith, are signing these papers saying the people of Johnson County can pay for it, and we know they can pay for it because, looky here, we've just raised their property taxes, and look at this $500 million plus of extra money in our reserves. Do not raise our taxes. And all while you're forcing our senior citizens out of their houses to place them in these 15-minute smart cities and making us spend our money just to survive in a 2-bedroom expensive apartment because you want to make sure that our inheritance goes nowhere. Thank you.
Next is Lauren C. Is there a Lauren C? Okay. How about a Scott Wee? Scott Wee. Okay. How about Jeff Harkness?
Jeff Harkness, Overland Park, Chair, Commissioners. The biggest problem with our government budgeting is failed federal policies. That's why taxes and prices are so high. If you look at your property tax bill, half of it goes to our school districts because of open borders, drug trafficking, and everything. Luckily, looks like there's a movement across the country for new superintendents in our school districts. Two biggest concerns are social media and academia in and of itself. Hopefully, they keep suing the social media companies, and somehow we can drag the U.S. Department of Education into this. I never had kids or got married, and I think, I'll keep on this, I think what we need to do is establish some kind of a best practice for children first. I don't know, somehow the Department of Education has gotten off that. And I don't know what the best way, maybe we can get the state to file a lawsuit against them. Or there's the other option, if we could ever find out how much money was actually in the federal pensions, we could just buy out the Department of Education and kick them to the curb and start over. Maybe this is what President Biden wants to do with the IRS. Just buy out the old ones and bring in the new. 2026, the world will be looking at the Kansas City area with the World Cup. That is also our 250th country's anniversary. So hopefully we can get Kansas in there in the whole spotlight, changing our educational system so the world can see. Thanks.
Next is Steve Snitz.
Steve Snitz, Prairie Village. I want to correct some misinformation stated by Commissioner Hanzlick at last week's budget hearing. Before an overflow crowd, the commissioner said the $16 million the county receives in COVID relief funds cannot be used to offset expenses or cut taxes. That's not accurate. The U.S. Treasury website, interim final rule from 2023, page 198, says the following regarding ARPA funds. And I quote, restriction, a state or territory shall not use funds to either directly or indirectly offset a reduction in the net tax revenue of the state or territory resulting from a covered change. Note this restriction only applies to states and territories, not to local governments like counties and cities. Further, it only applies to a reduction in net tax revenues and not to offsetting costs for programs that qualify under the guidelines. So that's allowed. This is confirmed on the Municipal Services and Research Center website, where it lists the same restrictions and verifies, in bold print, this provision does not apply to local governments. And yes, a county is a local government. So Johnson County can use the $16 million in ARPA funds to offset expenses in 2024. We just saved Johnson County the taxpayers $16 million. So commissioners, we're asking you today, go back to work and use that $16 million to pay for planned expenses. Goodness knows we've heard enough of that today that it's needed, that qualify under the guidelines instead of dumping it into reserves. But first you must start by voting no on the proposed budget today.
Next is Phil Bauer.
Hi, my name's Phil Bauer. I'm in Leawood in the 1st District, and I'm also here today to ask you to vote no on this tax increase of a budget, and I'm here to offer a solution. Now, I understand that correcting this budget to not exceed revenue neutral could be complex. I can also understand, Commissioner Allenbrand, your comments from last Thursday when you said, I wish someone would come forward with real numbers and a plan. And as you all know, I've done that. And again, Commissioner Allenbrand, thanks for checking into the numbers that I sent you all. I appreciate that. On August 9th, I sent each of you a spreadsheet where I outlined several areas where we can save taxpayer dollars and bring this budget in under the revenue neutral amount. Things like the savings include the $16 million that Steve Snitz just mentioned, that we can use those to offset items that have already been in the budget, that are already planned. This tax relief program that's costing the taxpayers $500,000, it would be a whole lot more equitable if we just didn't raise taxes to begin with. Saves us $500,000 and also saves us the cost of administrating the program. Keeping the library operating costs at 2023 levels, that would save taxpayers almost $10 million. And Commissioner Hanzlick, as you mentioned, it's important, but it doesn't put food on the table. There are a lot more things in this spreadsheet that I can't really go through in 2 minutes, and you all have it. So take those suggestions and use them to lower our property taxes. But first, start by voting no on this tax increase of a budget today. Thank you.
Next is Maria Holliday.
Good afternoon. I also would urge you to vote no because I believe that we need to take a closer look at this budget and where these numbers are. I wanted to start, though, we've talked about these numbers. It's $110 million more than last year you could have had without exceeding revenue neutral. But we're going to get $1.7 billion more from the increase in property taxes over last year. 75 new employees. I'd like to see where and how we actually need those employees over last year. Mostly I want to talk about your strategic priorities. You have that you're working with partners to improve housing options for resident needs identified in the Johnson County Housing Continuum. A lot of words. But when I look at the next slide on community priorities, I don't see anything, nope, nothing about housing. So back up to the next priority, which is to completing and maintaining infrastructure needed to support our growing community. That is your job, for sure. And that's what you see for all of the, it's a great place to live, work, and raise children. They don't tell you that those numbers aren't quite as good as they were last year. The third one is to invest in our workforce. Not your job. That's the job of the private sector. Last one is to provide a healthy and safe community through the lens of sustainability, diversity, equity, and inclusion. How about just provide a safe and healthy community? The end. Because that's the number one concern of our citizens in Johnson County.
Next, I have Angela Bertoncini. Angela? Okay,
Angela had to leave.
okay. Next, then, how about Lynn Levine?
Hi, I'm Lynn Levine. I'm in Overland Park, Kansas. I just want to say that some of my stats are not following yours. I'm not sure where you're getting any of your stats, but if you look at taxrates.org, you'll see things like Johnson County has one of the highest median property taxes in the United States. It isn't as low what you're saying, and you're saying that Johnson County, if you look at the Kansas property taxes by county, Johnson County is also the highest. Please look at that site, because the one right after us is Douglas. Johnson County is the highest. That's nothing to be proud of. You talk about infrastructure, you talk about all the benefits we have. Yeah, almost every year I have to call you guys up. I have to call Overland Park up and tell them to, how about the snow and remove it so I can get my car out of the garage. Almost every single year. I've had 2 flat tires, $300 each because of your great potholes. Yeah, I'm really impressed, and I can go on with that. So we have a real problem because it seems like you really want to help all your employees, and I understand that. But how about helping us sustain our livability, our lives? Most of us are on fixed income. So we can't just say, we want all this money and go and get it just like you guys do. You just keep raising our taxes. You're not thinking about us at all. How can you be public servants? I'm really confused about this because it seems like you don't care at all. We can just be replaced. Is that true? Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to invite Ms. Symes back. Commissioner Ashcraft, I had called on you first for questions regarding the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Symes, I have another question first. It was mentioned a couple of times, a reference to $16 million. I believe that's referring to the SLRF funds designated under the Support Services Group. I'm not 100% sure. Could you elaborate on that line item, please?
Yes, so what they're referring to is that cannot reduce the mill levy. However, it can be programmed for other expenditures for services that are approved under that legislation. And I believe that the board has already approved a spending plan for that 16 million for community projects.
Okay, thank you. The question I was going to ask, and I said slide 11, I meant to say slide 10, if possible. Very good. You note various funds and reserves. I was wondering, I understand that there was about $22.5 million available for from SLFR funds that were recouped from programmatic expenses. Are they represented in this diagram, or are they somewhere else?
Yes, they're included in the general fund balance.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, Commissioner O'Hara?
Thank you. This has been a long process, and as I've mentioned before, unfortunately, is structured so that the individual commissioners and public cannot really have substantive input into the budgets. So it's really difficult for me to even know where to begin. But I want to just give a few suggestions that we have an assistant county manager who is going to be retiring in December. He's been here for a long time, and I've known Joe forever, forever, back to when I was getting sewer permits when I was a general contractor. But we have the capacity, the ability not to replace that, that managerial position. That would be one idea, just one little idea. The other thing is that the $93.5 million in tax incentives that's diverting from the public, that's being diverted from public coffers to the pockets of big developers. Take the $2.5 million of sales tax out of it, so about $91 million. If you take 20% of that, that's $18 million that's being diverted from the county. And that would make a big dent in being able to be revenue neutral. So don't think that these tax incentives aren't impacting you. They're impacting you right now. And I think that the fire districts really, really exemplified that. The other thing is that we have a ticking time bomb within our budget. You notice that, I believe, what is the property tax, $352 million approximately?
Yes.
So where's all the rest of this money coming from to fund our county? Well, I'll give you two examples. The housing department, we have $1.5 million in federal grants. In corrections, we have grants of $3.8 million. The list goes on and on and on. What happens when those revenue streams are no longer available? We need to really be looking at how are we going to deal with this. I mean, this truly is a ticking time bomb, because if these revenue sources go away, then we're going to have to figure out some way of backfilling it. And another example, in 2019, we had 2 epidemiologists in the health department. 2023, we had 7. So why aren't we rolling back some of these expenditures that accumulated during COVID? I mean, the increases are staggering from 2019. The appraiser's office, 41.7% increase. Aging and Human Services, 51.9%. Mental Health, 65.5%. Parks and Rec, 45.9%. 0.3%. I mean, these are astronomical. The sheriff was 34.8%, so I guess he's not quite as high a priority as some of these other organizations. And then we have the library. They're wanting $4 million for a refresh for approximately 2,700 square feet. You've heard from Councilwoman Wendy North that would be better used to go into land acquisition for a future library. And by the way, and I think that they had like 1,000 square feet that they were going to add onto that building. And someone said, well, there's no room to add on to that building because the parking lot's so small. But anyway, be that as it may, you're still looking at nearly $1,000 a square foot for the refresh, not the addition. And in Edgerton, it's $2 million for 2,062 square feet, and that comes out to $969 a square foot for a refresh. And you tell me that there's no room in this budget for improvements? This is disgusting.
Questions? Commissioner Ashcraft?
If I may.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner O'Hara, I'm not going to quibble with you about your assertion. I understand what you're trying to say, but I would frame it a little differently if I could. I would suggest we change this budget proposal and actually offer what I would call a COVID dividend. We take the $22.5 million, or at least most of it, and put it towards the budget so that we can actually reduce the mill levy. It would not reduce the total amount of the budget, but it would reduce the mill levy just for 1 year. And that would give us a year to focus on instilling efficiency in the organization as a whole. Maybe many of the things, maybe all of the things you said, but allow management to focus on that. So I would make a motion to change the particulars in this briefing sheet for the general fund budget to change it from 17.495 to 16.148, which still recognizes new growth, but it's a significant, almost a $20 million reduction that could be paid for out of these reserve funds.
So,
May I have a
hold on,
question?
Hold on, nope, hold on. Per the policy and the rules that we put in place, we are allowing everybody to do the questions and comments before we get a motion on the table. So I understand you want to rush it out there. There'll be an opportunity to discuss all these topics, but these are the rules that you all voted for, so we're going to go and abide by them here, though I appreciate the sentiment.
Chairman Kelly?
Yes.
Can I just respond to the reserves? We've talked about the reserves before, but I don't think we've gone into a lot of detail just so that everyone understands. Although we have $220 million in the general fund reserves, there's $38 million that's restricted for public safety 3, $1.5 million restricted for grant and fee restrictions, $9.5 million for inventories and prepaids that are restricted, $2.8 restricted in the budget resolution for items such as the sheriff's budget, any overages he might have. So right there, and also the auxiliary fund for any healthcare overages or issues, because obviously we budget that 18 months in advance and a lot can change in that time period. So that's about $88.6 million of restricted reserves. We then have an estimate of about $85 million of working capital. That's our 6-month, in a sense, reserve. If there's an emergency, a catastrophe, we have that. That's the money that's there, that's really there to not touch. It's there in case of any kind of emergency, just like we all would probably have at our homes. So what that leaves available, after all designations and restrictions, is $45 million. Excuse me, $45 million. Public safety sales tax 1 is part of that at $13.8 million. Public safety sales tax 2, $13.8 million, which again, those two are for public safety reserves. And then you have about $17 million that's truly unrestricted. So I just wanted to make sure that when we're talking about reserves, we understand that yes, although there's $220 million, there are restrictions, safety nets within that for the county. And so it does leave about $45 million. Just wanted to clarify.
Thank you, appreciate that explanation. Questions regarding the budget, Commissioner Hanslick?
Oh, just, I had 2 questions. First of all, as the liaison to the Johnson County Library Board, I wanted to clarify that the renewal programs that have been discussed for the DeSoto, Spring Hill, and Edgerton branches were actually done with public engagement. There were online and paper surveys. There were discussions held early last year, and the proposals that the library staff put together were based on that public input. So the library board did not direct any particular expenditure. This was all based on what the public input had indicated. So I wanted to make sure that was clear, that it's from the public, and certainly there are changes that can occur in these proposals. I think it would be up to perhaps more public input from Spring Hill if they want to wait and consider building a new library. What that would cost would be, I'm sure, a lot more than refreshing their current building. And at this point, I don't believe the library has any estimate on what that might cost to build a new building. But we do know what the public has said they want with their current building. But that can be changed. But I just want to make sure that's clear, that this was not pulled out of thin air. It was based on a lot of public input, just like we've done with all of our other libraries before we have made any changes. It's all based on public engagement and public input. And then in regard to the SLFRF, Ms. Himes, if you can remind me how much we have available, and it's my recollection that we have designated all of that at this point.
Yes, I believe the full 16 million has been designated for programs.
Right, including to the two nonprofits that received $250,000 each last week.
I'm going to let Brent come up and clarify.
Thank you.
Commissioner, for the most part, sorry, Brent Christensen, Finance. For the most part, all the money has been spoken for. The one part that hasn't been approved by the board is the $6.5 million that we have earmarked for housing. That's the only thing we have left.
Yes, and we are working on that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Allenbrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have several different comments, but I want to elaborate because there's a lot of numbers that float around here and some of them aren't correct. And so I'm trying to go back and look things up. And Councilwoman, I said that I would make sure that we emailed you the survey that was done. And I had reached out to Edgerton and talked to their city manager and their mayor, and there was an extensive working with the city in putting together a survey that went out to the community, along with what happened in Spring Hill. And, you know, it's hard to tell people, you know, when they don't have internet or they have a place to gather where kids want to go read. And I understand the growth. You look at Spring Hill as one of the fastest growing communities, and you see Edgerton is going to grow. But to not allow them to be updated with technology and books, to me that's not the answer. It doesn't help. And then I also look at new growth, and we know that growth is going to change, and you're going to have a challenge there with road infrastructure. But also, if you think about if you're a developer, you understand the cost of land and what it costs to do that. And you know, to build a new library somewhere else, that's where the city can work with land that maybe could be donated by a developer to help offset those costs with the library. And I know that the library is more than happy to sit down and have discussions and more than happy to share this report. But, you know, from people that are using that library, also a couple of comments made that about, mental health and housing and workforce and not providing the staff. I mean, if you look on slide 11, you see, how many positions were added for mental health, the Sheriff's Department, Med Act, and then also to get our pay scale in place. And I'm not trying to pick on the sheriff, but, we upped the budget from, and I can go back, I asked for a spreadsheet from, we went all the way back, and that to 2014 up to current, and it's steadily increased. In fact, almost to 67% from 2018. And I'm not saying, that's something this entire board voted on to support. So I'm not saying that's wrong, but we also have to support staff and direct care staff, the DA's department, the Med Act, and we've been working on this budget. It's almost like after one budget, you're working on the next year before it's even that year. So that's what's so hard, that when you're looking at it, we're working on 2024, which, you look at 5 to 10 years down the road, but you have to think about, those departments. And we hear a lot about COVID, and I think everybody should have the right, if you want to get vaccinated, get vaccinated. If you don't get vaccinated. But, our health department does a lot more than, than COVID. They're out providing education and training in the schools. It's making us a healthier community. And they provide a lot of services that we don't give them credit for. I think it's easy to sit here and dictate to the staff that works here and to dictate to the city, to city councils, mayors, about what they do in their line of business. It's our job here to work within the charter that was formed. Gosh, was that 11 years? I know it meets every 10 years. So we just had a charter. And so the county manager is the manager. And, we can sit here all day and micromanage what she's doing. And, I've had disagreements with her, and her door's open, and I've gone in and shared those with her. And she looks into it. But, it's just frustrating sometimes because I feel like there's a lot of people that get beat up, staff, and we're elected officials, so I guess that's part of it. I love my job. I love being able to work with people and work on solutions. I wanted to touch on a couple other things. Also, it was said that, workforce, mental health, housing is really not our jobs. But I think if you're concerned about what's going on in the community and trying to help with homelessness, and that was brought up, getting people into their jobs, being able to help people that maybe don't have a GED and that needs to get their GED, to help put those people in place. I feel like it's my responsibility to work in with my community, and I will continue to do that. I think there are so many things in this budget that I think that's not understood as far as the reserves, and you've done a really good job, laying it all out. And I would hope that the next time we do this budget, that if, and I've said this, and Phil, I took your budget and I had the staff go through it, and the numbers were off. And I just hope that we would start earlier in seeing what your budget is. It's frustrating to me to sit up here and all of a sudden I hear other budgets and hear things come forward. We'll put it together and sit down with the staff and go through it. So I'm going to make those comments, and I'm sure I'll think of something later, but I think it's important to take care of our staff. We've put together a staff program, a STEP program in place. We've also done that within the fire departments, and I continue to support getting things in place. And I'm going to go back to COVID again. When the economy tanked, everything kind of got frozen, and then also when COVID, which don't ever want to relive that again, and I don't intend to, but, things, staff positions were, a lot of things were, we weren't addressed. And so here we are facing now with adjusting pay rates. And we will bring up one company about, how much they pay. But if you look at the competitive pay around, you can go to Amazon, you can go to Hostess Cupcake. I was at Taco Bell and start pay $25 an hour with a bonus, so we have to be competitive. So I'm not going to go on. I want to thank you and your staff and everybody that's sitting here that's been a part of this process.
A couple really quick points. Number one, thank you, Councilwoman North. It's great to see you. It's nice to have other elected representatives here advocating for their community. Appreciate the kind words. Let me give them back. Thank you for your service to Spring Hill. It's my understanding that there's a difference of opinion on the governing body in Spring Hill. We have differences of opinion up here. So my support for the library refresh project is simply a difference of opinion, but not a condemnation of your opinion or your work for your community. It's my understanding that specifically for a new library, it would cost approximately $15 to $20 million, and there's no current operational budget within the library planning for a new library. And the CIP for the library, the 5-year CIP, doesn't include more than the $4 million amount, as the population of Spring Hill has not yet justified the $15 to $20 million project. I believe in our conversations with the mayor, he understands this and has supported the current plan for refreshing the library. So wanted to just address that briefly. I think also, when we're talking theoretically, we can't have an honest conversation about TIF. And I don't say this every time it comes up because, it comes up ad nauseum, but you can't have an honest conversation about TIFs without discussing what that property was generating previously. And also the economic impacts on jobs, on sales tax, on other economic indicators of growth. Simply putting a number out there on what's being diverted is not an honest take on the impacts to the economy of TIF. So I'll say that. The last point I want to make is when we consider reducing amounts, especially in reserves or in one-time funds, and using those for a mill levy reduction, that creates an unfunded mandate. And that unfunded mandate has to be addressed within the next year. And at this point, it makes much more sense and is more fiscally responsible to actually talk about what ongoing services that you would proceed to cut, whether this year or next year, to fill that unfunded mandate. We don't like getting unfunded mandates from the state. We don't want to provide them to our staff here, in my opinion. So all that to say is we're having a lot of great conversation here. I think we actually need to get to work and get a motion on file. And so, Commissioner Hanslick, if you would get us a motion on file, we will work from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to approve and adopt resolution number 080-23, adopting the fiscal year 2024 budget and FY 2024 to 2028 capital improvement program as proposed.
Myers, second.
Moved by Hanslick, seconded by Myers. Suggestions and comments on the motion, Commissioner Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I heard what you said. I do not believe that framing it as an unfunded mandate is true or realistic. It is nothing more than a COVID dividend. It's one time. It's understood as one time. The funds are available and can be used that way. So I would move to amend the motion to move the mill levy for county taxing jurisdiction from 17.495 to 16.148. That gives us a year to look at efficiencies. It also bakes in the inevitable increase in revenues generated from increasing assessed values. So the actual makeup for county staff and for us would be significantly less and quite doable, in my opinion.
O'Hara, second.
Okay, so that is a substitute motion that you're making?
An amendment to.
Or amendment to the motion, okay. So we're going to discuss the amendment first, and let's try to limit our comments to the amendment. I know some things overlap, but let's try to take these directly. Commissioner Allenbrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm going to address the amendment, and I'm going to explain to Commissioner Ashcraft why I can't support that. First of all, we took money out of reserves, and I feel like I'm picking on the sheriff again, but we took money out of the reserves to help with that budget. And then, so now we're going to take more money, and we're going to decide then how we're going to pay for it in the future. So I feel like all we're doing is adding compound to that when we should have been working on it this past year. So I don't know how you can all of a sudden say, we're going to do this, and then what are we going to do? We're going to start cutting staff? I mean, what are you going to, you got to do something. You just can't go back and to take that money and figure out how you're going to pay for it. So I can't support it.
Point of personal privilege, since it was directed to me.
Commissioner Ashcraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Allenbrand, thank you for your observations. Those monies were specifically put into reserves from SLFRF funds and are available for this use if we so choose. And secondly, it is one time. Now, if we are energetic enough to find efficiencies, then it can be long-term. If not, then it would come back full force next year. But it is a one-time dividend.
Okay. So I want to direct this to Robin Symes and make sure that we all are talking apples to apples here, because we're at the finish line here. And so I appreciate the discussion, but I want to make sure that we're just all understanding what is being proposed. So can you, as staff, understand what is being proposed regarding this COVID dividend?
Yes, what I'm assuming is that we would be using reserves to replace ad valorem tax revenue. And so we would cut the budget in ad valorem tax revenue support by $19,792,282.
Yes.
And so at that point, I would reduce the budget arbitrarily somewhere, and that would reduce the ad valorem tax revenue, knowing that next year we would still have the same expenditures. We would reduce ad valorem, but we would keep the same expenditures. So in a sense, reserves replace ad valorem. However, now I don't have revenue for the following year to cover those $20 million of expenditures.
So be fair with Commissioner Ashcraft, that's what I mean by an unfunded mandate, is we've provided a level of service that the people of Johnson County have said that they want and frankly expect. And so to cut that by $20 million in a year without being specific as to which particular services would fill that $20 million bucket, I think is disingenuous and unfair to them. And so I don't support that. Commissioner Hanslick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would appreciate Commissioner Ashcraft's thoughts. The question I have is, I'm trying to clarify the $19 million that would have to come out of reserves. Are you saying that would be the SLFRF funds, even though those have already, except for $6 million, have already been allocated?
No. These are funds that, excuse me. No, thank you, Commissioner. No, those funds have already been gone through the process programmatically and are available with no restrictions and can be used for tax. And to clarify what Ms. Symes has indicated, the budget for this year would not be affected. It's just the funding of it. It would come from, that $22 million would come from reserves, not from the mill levy. So programs this coming year would not be affected directly, but it would give us a year to look at operational efficiencies and improvements, maybe along the lines of what Commissioner O'Hare said, but I trust that management will put their pencil to work to find efficiencies wherever we can, and if we can't, then next year it would have to be offset by a return of the mill levy. I would hope that wouldn't happen, but that would be the fallback.
And Commissioner Hanslick, just to clarify, so Commissioner Ashcraft is talking about the countywide support funds. It's the revenue recapture that then we have in the reserves.
Commissioner Myers?
Again, I cannot support this because, again, as it was already stated, it's arbitrary. And that's not a way to do business, to arbitrarily reduce budget without saying this is what we're planning on doing or this is how it's going to be done. I can't do that. It's in my mind, that's not the way to do business.
Commissioner O'Hare.
Thank you. So I believe in 2022, we used reserves to increase the sheriff's pay by 13 million, is that correct?
Correct.
And then we just used 15 million for the pay plan for the rest of the county employees, correct?
Correct.
So we have a history of using reserves.
The 15 million wasn't the full amount for this year.
But, okay, that was 7.5 million. Well, approximately 7.75. Anyway, so we already have the, this is what we've done before. And also, didn't we have $43 million in carryover from 2023? Is that what is?
Oh, yeah, I'd have to look at that. Part of that, though, is, again, part of the countywide support funds and some of the SLFRF funds, not just general operations.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And there was also some revenue increases that, as you're aware, we are budgeting now for 18 months ahead. And so we do our best to project those revenues. We do it conservatively. However, it's hard for us to predict when interest rates go up. And so there are going to be those fluctuations and changes.
I understand that, but we have already established that we have done this, and between those two items, we used $22 million in reserves to increase pay. So now Commissioner Ashcraft has made a motion to use 19 point whatever million, a little over $19 million, to reduce the burden of property taxes on the people of Johnson County. So we've already set the precedent. This is what we've done. And correct me if I'm wrong, but wastewater is using reserves to blunt the cost of all of these improvements on the wastewater plants.
No, I believe that's to minimize the rate increases, and that was a plan.
To minimize, okay.
Right, that was a plan that came to the.
Commissioner Harry, can you let her answer the question, please?
That was a plan that came to the board that the board approved. It was, again, moving the flow, and so that was in the proposal in the 5-10-year plan.
Correct. So we, again, are setting a precedent that one of our departments is using reserves to blunt the amount of increase that the folks are going to be looking on their wastewater bills. So why can't we use this? And one example that we could cut, $5.8 million, is that we have 2 retirement funds at the county. We have Capers, and then we have the 457. And the 457 is, I believe the number that you gave me was $5.8 million.
$6 million.
So that's one. You know, the people in the county are suffering. And it's not just property taxes. It's insurance, it's food costs, it's everything is so expensive. And yes, we increased the pay plan, but that added $15 million to the 2024 budget. So we need to figure out a way to balance this, that we are taking care of the employees and that we are also taking care of the taxpayers. But again, we have ticking time bombs sitting in our budget because of all this grant funding. But I support Commissioner Ashcraft's motion. I would much prefer to have gone through this from the very beginning of figuring out ways that we could reduce costs. There are efficiencies that we can find.
We don't support our staff by cutting their pensions.
Double retirement.
Thank you.
Is it allowable to call a question?
Sure.
Call a question.
Is there a second?
On the amendment, right?
On the amendment.
Okay, second.
Okay, this is on the amendment. Can you call the roll, please, Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Fast.
No.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, no.
Commissioner O'Hara.
Yes.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick, no.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Allenbrand.
Allenbrand, no.
And Chairman Kelly.
No. 2 votes in favor, 5 against. Motion, is that consistent with your count?
That is correct.
Okay, the amendment fails to the original motion. Commissioner Fast.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, and I really appreciate the creativity and innovation Commissioner Ashcraft brought, so thank you. In my district, I have met with a lot of neighborhood groups. Bo joined me with some. I speak at regular town halls. I try to go to different churches. Each week I go to the farmers markets and it never, every week somebody comes up to me and talks to me about their skyrocketing appraisals and that they're really worried that their housing costs are unsustainable. Evergy costs are going up. There was a constituent here, he came because his appraisal in 1 year went up 26%. We would love to have Commissioner Hanslick's 8%. But it's, it is 15 to 20. Many of them I met were over 20%, over 100,000. Some have gone up 200,000 in appraised value. I mean, so the common thread I've heard from a lot of my residents, more money in transit, very different than what, some of else you hear. But they want efficiencies. They don't want their taxes to keep going up. They're very worried about how this is unsustainable, that they can't live in their house. They want the best possible services for the lowest costs. You heard from our fire district. In 5 years, there's been a 37.57% increase in property values in Northeast Johnson County. The taxes for many residents that told me, several years ago they were $3,000, now they're $7,000. And so that it's just huge with your fixed income. Our general services budget this year went up 10%, last year went up 10%, and that is something that I've heard from a number of residents. The national inflation is 3 to 4%. Previous years, the budget was 4%, 2%, 3%. So we're, far over the national inflation, which we weren't in other years. So cost efficiency, we can and have found cost efficiencies in the past. Last year, our managers found $1 million in savings without reducing services, without cutting services, without reducing quality. During the pandemic, within weeks of the pandemic, they found $25 million in cost savings without reducing services. Our previous deputy county manager, he consolidated our emergency services, financial management. He talked about the duplication in dispatch, which hasn't come. And I know our great deputy manager, I've talked to her and cheered her on. She's going to bring forth something in the past. So I know she'll find us savings just like our deputy did. So 1.4 million is 3 million and 7. It's 3 million, 0.7, and you said with exemptions it could be 4 million, a quarter of a mil. And so our budget includes a quarter of a mil. So I believe we could reduce it another quarter of a mil. We have a $1.7 billion budget, and we can't find $3.7 million of additional savings. And we've gotten over $200 million in COVID funds. And many of that have been to offset costs, like in the sheriff's budget. And so I just don't agree that we have to cut services. I taught public policy for years. If somebody said an argument to me that I thought was very simplistic, I would say, go back, bring me back that paper and look further into it. So for me, that, you have to cut savings, I don't agree with that argument. I think our managers have and can find savings. That's why we hire the best managers. So I want to put more money in the pockets of taxpayers. This isn't where many of you want. More of you want additional mill levy reductions, but I try to reach a middle ground. I have residents who would say, hey, increase my taxes. And then I have others who want, I heard from a lot who want mill levy revenue neutral. So I try to bring it all together to represent my district. So I have a motion. I move to amend the original motion to include in a 1/2 mill levy reduction, which would include the fourth proposed budget plus an additional 1/4 of a mill levy reduction with discussion of additional mill levy reduction next year.
Okay, so moved?
I'll second, because I want to understand it better.
Okay. Does staff understand the
Yes.
amendment? Okay. Questions or comments on that? Commissioner Hanslick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do not disagree that finding more efficiencies is top of game. But to bring that forward at the very last minute is concerning to me because I don't know what that means. And the same thing with the amendment proposed by Commissioner Ashcraft. I would rather see us, let's have a plan for the next year to find efficiencies. Let's look into that. But to do it at the last minute, I don't think is fair to our staff. It isn't fair to the other commissioners who, I need to know what we're talking about, and I need to know the impact of that. So that would be what I would propose, is that we work on that for next year. But to do it at the last minute, I don't think is responsible.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanslick, and I'll let Commissioner Fast answer this, but my question would be, just in fairness to staff, I agree with you on a lot of things that you have said there, that we do have a fantastic staff that has found a lot of efficiencies, and those have continued. Those aren't always celebrated in the way that I think they could be. And that's our job. We need to do a better job of showing where we have actually found efficiencies, whether it be in innovation or in technology, that we've been able to eliminate positions or combine services to provide that efficiency to the people of Johnson County. We have done it, and we'll continue to do it. But I'd ask, specifically with your motion, do you have specific suggestions for staff that would be encompassed within a $0.25 reduction? And so I'll let you.
Well, and I will just say, how Commissioner Hillenbrand just said, our job is to work within the charter and not micromanage. And so that is our job, to work within the charter and for them to find the savings. And to address what Commissioner Hanslick said, we just had a few weeks ago a surprise motion to, on the county manager's pay plan increase. None of us else knew what was going on. You sure knew what was going on. So it's not fair to say this is a surprise. All of us have done motions. I brought this up during retreat. This is, what I don't agree what you're saying. That's just kicking the can down the road. We need to address it now. That is our job. We're a policy making. We don't designate. That is why we hire and we pay some of the best salaries in the nation.
Commissioner Allenbrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When we were sitting around kind of in a study group talking about, we looked at, last year we rolled back I think it was a mill. We rolled back a mill. So every year we've rolled back. This year we did, I think, $0.25 mill, and we looked at different ways to maybe roll back that more. We're sitting here because we chose, at least some of us chose, to put money into our sheriff's department, our firefighters, and so we took reserves, which we're not used to doing that. We took those reserves to pay for that. So now we have to look at the future budget to see how we're going to do that. And to sit here and talk about taking somebody's retirement, there is 2 retirement plans, and I think it has to do with the firefighters. I would like somebody to clarify that, because I know there was somebody that took a look at that, but I think, we're in the last minute of coming up with ideas, and we've had over 6 months to talk about different plans to come forward.
I think Commissioner O'Hara is referring to, you have KPERS and KPF, and that's our state pension plan, but then you also have our supplemental plan, which the county contributes, and then individuals are able to contribute into that as well.
So
A match of
benefit to the
4%.
employees. So it's, sorry, if we could just take turns. So I know that was looked at before, and there was no way to combine those, and that's a benefit. So I just wanted to make those, to get that clarified.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple clarifications, if I could. Commissioner Allenbrand, I believe we reduced the mill, $0.25 mill last year, but for all 3 taxing entities. $0.25 mill for parks, rec, and for the general fund. It was not 1 mill total. Is that correct?
I'd like Robin to answer that because
I know.
it
Let
was
me look
closer to
here.
1.
Yeah, we reduced it 1 mill, 0.960 mils in 2023.
Thank you.
It was $0.25 mill the prior year, but yes, for the 2023 budget, we reduced it by 1 mill.
Thank you.
Well,
Ms.
thank you.
Hines.
Let's do it again.
Come up with a plan.
No, if I could clarify, Commissioner Fast, your motion for this budget is to reduce the mill levy by 1/2 mil?
Well, so we have a 4 included in the budget. 1/4 is included, so I'm adding another 1/4.
Another 1/4 mil?
So it'd be a total of a 1/2 mil reduction.
Okay, so would you be willing to consider a friendly amendment and add a 1/4 mil reduction for both library and parks?
My district, libraries and parks could walk on water. For the majority of people, Prairie Village wants that new Corns Library.
Okay.
So it is, your district, all our districts are very different, but our librarian there is the district hero. The Northeast loves our libraries.
Very good, thank you.
Commissioner Allen.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, but can we clarify something? Because I vaguely remember when we were clear back in study session, we looked at different ways to reduce from 1/4 to a mil to going neutral. And there was a lot of cuts that would have to be made. Didn't we look at different?
We didn't at that point. We asked for direction, and at that point, we were looking at a 1/4 mil going forward.
Okay.
Based on the initial direction.
Commissioner O'Hara.
Thank you. So last year, we cut the general fund by how much? The mill levy?
Oh, I don't have the exact, I'll have to look at what because don't forget, you have the county taxing district, parks, and library. I can have our stat. You want just the general fund?
I want to know how that 1 mil was made up, whether it was all the general fund or if it was partially the general
Parks
fund,
and Library
partially the
also
park, and
were
partially
reduced.
the
Parks and
library.
Library were also reduced by a small amount. They'll look it up here. I don't have.
So Commissioner Ashcraft was correct. It's approximately a 1/4 mil for the library.
It was not a 1/4 mil. No, that's a significant reduction because Parks and Library have mills around, it's like 3.8, 3.0. And so to reduce them by a 1/4 mil, that's like 3.6 million for each of them. So it's a significant reduction compared to the county taxing district.
I will make a suggestion to Commissioner Fast that the $4 million that is being suggested for the Spring Hill Library, and I know that the mayor and the city manager, they're terrified that they're going to lose this $4 million if they don't jump on the. It's not that they support throwing $4 million into a refresh. It's that they're terrified that they wouldn't have it for the possibility of land acquisition or whatever for a new library. So we could designate that $4 million to go back in reserves. It's just not going to be spent.
Are you suggesting to reduce the mill levy by that amount? Because
No,
that would
no,
again
no,
just go back
no,
in reserves?
no.
Okay.
No,
Thank
I'm
you.
suggesting that we just put that back in reserves. We could do the same way with the $2 million for Edgerton, because $1,000 a square foot for a refresh of a small library that's 2,000 square feet, and I mean it's irresponsible.
All right, Commissioner Myers. You're good. Commissioner Hanslick.
Yes, I was, in response to Commissioner O'Hara, that money has not been allocated or designated, the $4 million. There's no putting it back anywhere. It's not been allocated, so it's
Simply, you just don't use the reserves, because I believe that both of those numbers are coming out of reserves. Is that correct? They're both coming out of reserves. Oh, my goodness, the library's using reserves.
Well, it hasn't been approved at this point.
So, Commissioner Fast.
I'd like to call the question, and then Commissioner O'Hara, why don't you just do another motion on that then?
Separate topic.
Yeah.
I'd like an opportunity. I haven't had a chance to address your suggestion, if that's okay, and I'll be brief. I appreciate the suggestion. I just find it arbitrary. I think if we're going to talk about specific cuts, I would be absolutely willing to have those specific conversations. Would have hoped we would have them earlier, but to arbitrarily just tell staff to cut $4 million, I don't think that's going to have the impact on the people of Johnson County or the first district. That's going to, the bigger impact will be upon the services that are being able to be provided, because that, I don't support it, but appreciate the suggestion. Okay,
second
the
the-
call of the question? Okay, this is on Commissioner Fast's amendment.
Commissioner Fast.
Aye.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, no.
Commissioner O'Hara.
Yes.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick, no.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Allenbrand.
Allenbrand, no.
And Chairman Kelly.
No, 3 votes in favor, 4 against. Is that consistent with your count?
That's correct.
Okay. Commissioner O'Hara, do you want to make a motion regarding the library?
I don't have the motion in front of me, but I can wing it. I move that the board direct the library board to take the $4 million for Spring Hill and the $2 million for the Edgerton and leave that in reserves until such time that they actually have the opportunity to visit with the school districts and the city councils for better direction for the use of that money.
Second.
Okay. Does staff understand the motion?
Yes.
Okay. Discussion on the motion?
Thank you, Robin.
Commissioner Hanslick?
Yeah, so the money's already in reserves. It's there. So to vote to leave it in reserves is sort of redundant.
Well, no, because the budget has them using those reserves for $4 million and $2 million.
So, but in other words, you're saying the vote is to kill those two projects?
To not kill, but to take
Defund,
time.
defund those two projects?
One at a
No,
time,
no.
commissioners, thank you.
Commissioner Hanslick, no, to better understand what the community wants. And I don't think that the library understands that $1,000 a square foot is just absolutely astronomical. And that this money, especially in Spring Hill, could be put to better use. And the community, I talked to the school district. The former superintendent had for years tried to get the library to do a joint project with the high school out at 199th and Ridgeview, and that didn't work. So there's been lots of conversations, but the fact that you're wanting to dump $4 million into a 2,680 square foot building is just, it's fiscally it's fiscal insanity. So anyway,
Thank you.
put the brakes on it, and
Commissioner
then
Ashcraft.
let's look at it better.
Okay, Commissioner Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure this motion is necessary, but it is a formality to address a statement of concern. There seems to be somewhat of a convoluted, and that sounds worse than I mean, but a difference of opinion in terms of what is done and what is needed. And I would trust that the library board and the library would sort that out before they make the expenditures. But having said that, Commissioner O'Hara, I think, wants to introduce a level of formality to make sure that's done before, quote unquote, a trigger is pulled and we can't go forward. Am I misinterpreting?
No, that's exactly right.
Okay.
It's in their budget.
So, Commissioner, I'm going to ask our staff to address this. Ms. Bostock-Ferguson?
Yes, I was going to ask either Robin or Tricia to clarify the Edgerton Library, because I understand the discussion on Spring Hill because it is included in this budget, and so you can impact that. I'm not sure, or it might take a different form if you're going to impact Edgerton, because I think that's different timing. Is that the same timing, or is that already included in the current year budget?
Tricia Solentrup with the library. It's the current budget, and we're talking about a couple different branches. So Spring Hill, what's included in the current budget is actually DeSoto.
Yes.
And I think we just got the actual branches mixed up. Just Edgerton had been in that general conversation earlier this year, and the library board decided to pause on Edgerton because they have a community center that they're building, and we want them to play through that, and then that will impact our design. So Spring Hill and DeSoto are the two that are in the budget.
So is it $2 million in DeSoto?
Correct.
How many square feet is that facility?
I don't have that off the top of my head. It's not too different from Spring Hill.
So Chairman, I was clarifying because when you said 2 libraries, so Spring Hill makes sense, it's a policy choice where you're headed, that makes sense to me on process. The process, though, to impact a current year budgeted library of DeSoto, and I don't know if you meant Edgerton or DeSoto, is another question on process. If you want to impact that, I need clarification from either legal, budget, or library, how to impact that one.
I will amend my motion to just impact the Spring Hill Library.
So any objections to the friendly amendment there? Okay, friendly amendment then. We're just talking about Spring Hill here. And there's no ongoing contracts, there are ongoing obligations as it relates to the Spring Hill refresh at this time. Is that correct? Not the concern that we would have as it relates to other libraries that may already have encumbered funds related to these various projects. And I think that was
That's my
staff's
understanding.
concern.
Correct.
And so now we're back to just the budgeted library in Spring Hill. Commissioner Fast.
Yeah, I would like our county librarian to come up again to go through the CIP, because, and I really appreciate, as you know, I brought together Prairie Village mayor, some counselors, staff, and I had to really push in, the board. I had to talk to the library board because I wanted the Corinth moved up in front of the Blue Valley. And that is our role. And I brought them all together and I talked to board members and the board then agreed. And so I thank you, and I will say they really listened. But can you go through you're finishing Merriam right now?
Correct. Yes, Marion Plaza's on time and on budget, opening in 2024. Then Spring Hill and DeSoto are the next planned. And then we are working, as Commissioner Fast talked about, with the city of Prairie Village. In 2 weeks, or in 1 week, the library board will sign off on the memorandum of understanding to begin a site design with the city and the YMCA on Harmon Park, and the potential of Corinth moving to that site.
And then the ones after that?
Well, then there's a comprehensive library master plan refresh, and then farther out, I guess it'd be 7-ish years, so off the CIP, but farther out would be looking at Blue Valley.
And the poor Cedar Row in Roland Park.
The comprehensive library master plan refresh would prove out any other buildings past Corinth, really.
Commissioner Allen Brand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if we're going to handpick where we're sending it, I just want you to know some of the fastest growing communities. So maybe we should divert money there, but, I shouldn't have said that. But anyway, I do appreciate you clarifying it, because I've been hearing this for the last two meetings, and it's like, that's not what I read. And Commissioner Hanslick presented with the studies that were done. And again, I remind everybody here, we have appointment on the library boards and the library board, and I have a copy of the study that was done. And so it's, when the citizens do the study, and that goes out by mail, they give their input. So, again, I'm not going to I can't go back and cut budgets from the library. I mean, you're talking about kids that go in there and use internet. You're talking about people that go there, and I get letters all the time. I've gotten emails, I've gotten calls, that they don't take subscription to magazines. It allows people that don't want to spend the money or have the money, that they can get all that for free through the county library. I didn't even know all those services existed. So there's a lot of services that we're unaware of that people in our community use. So magazines and, books, and that they can schedule those ahead of time. So I can't support this. It should have been something that we talked about a long time ago.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to call the question on the amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. The question's been called. This is on Commissioner O'Hara's amendment. Would the clerk call a roll?
Commissioner Fast.
No.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, no.
Commissioner O'Hara.
Yes.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick, no.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Allenbrand.
Allenbrand, no.
And Chairman Kelly.
No, 2 votes in favor, 5 against. Is that consistent with your count?
That's correct.
Okay, to the original motion, I'd like to call the question.
A second.
Would the clerk call the roll?
This is on,
This is the original motion. This is the budget.
which includes library and parks.
Yes.
Correct?
Commissioner Fast.
Aye.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, aye.
Commissioner O'Hara.
No.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick, aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
No.
Commissioner Allenbrand.
Allenbrand, aye.
And Chairman Kelly.
Aye, 5 votes in favor, 2 against. Is that consistent with your count?
That's correct.
All right, thank you very much. If it's all right with the commission, since there are folks registered to schedule, or registered for public comment on item number 13, if there is an objection, we'll go to that item now and invite Ms. Trent forward regarding the joint response to the Kansas Open Meeting Act's complaint. Ms. Trent, good afternoon.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. Before you, you have the joint response of the Board of County Commissioners to the complaint that has been filed with the AG's office involving an alleged KOMA violation. The joint response includes extensive documentations that have been requested by the Attorney Generals and supporting documentation to the allegations. Specifically, there's over 200 pages of minutes that date back to January 1st to the present that they have requested. The remaining documents that were attached involved not only the slides that were shown during the executive session, they included also the Home Rule Charter, which outlined the role of the county manager, chief counsel, and auditor as employees of this commission, and that you set the compensation. From the response, it outlined since I was not present, I pulled the questionnaires from all of you, which are Exhibit 1, along with staff that were present. As I indicated at the last meeting, I also included statements were made by commissioners to the news media outlets, so that was also included as statements. I did not include those as of yesterday that I saw in another article of Commissioner O'Hara, but I believe since she's the complainant, it fairly addresses the different viewpoints of what occurred back in executive session. It is Chief Counsel's review and the legal department. We are submitting to the AG that there is no KOMA violation and requesting that this complaint be closed. From the information that was provided within that response, I believe it outlines that it was not improper. The topic of discussion of your employees and how that the pay tables you were about to adopt on June 29th related to your specific employees. It's my understanding from the slides and what was presented collectively. Again, I was not back there, but from the representation of the slides and the talking points, it was a discussion of, by your adoption, 2 of the positions, county manager and chief counsel, would result in this pay, which you needed to know as your employees, and then how it would affect also the county manager, which did require a vote of this commission if you were to revise her pay comparable to the market study that you had been reviewing over the course of many months. The discussion of the pay tables were only as it relates to your specific employees, since you, by Home Rule Charter and your reorganization resolution, have that obligation for compensation. At this point, from review of your statements, although there may be different positions, it did not appear to me to be a KOMA violation. But ultimately, that decision is on the Attorney General's office, and they will review the information. If more information is needed, then we will cooperate. I will let you know that I included not only the audio of portions of meetings, I also, from June 29th, but I also included June 22nd because the complaints allegation indicated that there was a discussion of the pay plan of your employees on that date in agenda review, and I was unable to locate any such other than a pay table that was reviewed with you and did have asterisks with noting that the county manager was unclassified. I also included written transcripts, although they're not confirmed, but they're from, our closed caption, so that we had a rough draft of what that was contained. Again, procedurally, there may be difference of opinions, but from a KOMA state statute, it is my position and the legal department that we did not see a KOMA violation. Again, I stand for any questions you may have as to that response.
Ms. Trent, thank you. I'm going to ask you to step aside. We had some registrants for public comment on this. Is Mr. Hobart here? Mr. Ben Hobart? Okay. Then we'll go to the next one. That's Debbie Detmer. Is she left as well? Okay. Then Maria Holliday.
Are you tired of me yet? Well, the fact that I need to be standing here is a testament to the lack of transparency on this board and in our staff. And I'm wondering if we can have a copy of the response.
It's in the packet. It's online.
Commissioner, we don't respond within public comments. We let them talk.
This is
other
different
counties-
than public comments.
Thank you.
This is different than public comments, and I've always had responses prior to your chairmanship. The core request that constituents are giving kind of exemplify the secrecy that we're having here, where they try to stonewall. And even when Ms. Trent is talking about all of the documentation that's required, I'm pretty sure she probably didn't ask tell the Attorney General he needed to pay for it like they do us. But a lot of that is online. Maybe not what's in your cow, but why isn't it? 30 years of teaching, and I wrote plans, and you can apply this to a lot of these scenarios that we're dealing with today. If I would have written lesson plans that had objectives at the top, without a strategy, without tactics, without performance indicators, and without measurable outcomes, I would have been fired. How is it that this board continues to not provide these things to the public? That is the transparency that we are looking for.
All right, that concludes what was literally public comment. Ms. Trent. All right, questions? Commissioner Allenbrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I want to clarify one thing, that this has been public. You chose to do that. This has all been a matter of public record, so anybody can go on and pull it up. They can pull it up the same time we do. I was busy out in my district, and I started getting phone calls about commissioners and comments made in the Kansas City Star, and I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. So I started getting these calls, and then I come in and then found out, because I couldn't get through all my emails, which I'm still so far behind on my emails, that there was a questionnaire that needed to be filled out. I understand the frustration level of, we're talking about budget and we're talking about cost. To go back to July, or I need to go back and look at when this date was. June, thank you. I had to not only, I had to go back and pull records. I had to go back and Linda Sater to pull things for me to look at, what I even second the motion, when we were looking, I actually seconded. I didn't even remember that I did that. So the cost that's involved in this, to me, and that commissioners are making public statements before the rest of it even know what's going on, I don't understand that. So I'm just going to bring that up, and I am grateful. I spent part of Thursday evening and then Friday morning up until 1 o'clock going back and looking at all the training that we had, that a couple of, Commissioner Myers and I attended, all the training that was offered when we were first elected. I went back and pulled all that because I didn't want to answer a question without being thorough. So I don't know how much time everybody else put into it, but I appreciate that executive sessions are there for a purpose. There's things that are included in employees that can't be public until, once it comes forward. So that's why executive sessions were created. So nobody is hiding anything. Everything's transparent. So these become public record, and I appreciate you, Ms. Trent, making them that way, because I don't think you had to do this. I don't think you had to open it up to the public. I think you could have just answered the complaint. I'm not sure. But anyway, I can't even imagine the cost that went into this as staff and everybody. I know how many staff has been working on core reports and a lot of the information we already have. But anyway, I just wanted to make that comment. Anyway.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I don't know if any needed response there. Commissioner Hanslick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would be glad to make a motion at this time so we can move along with.
I'd see some other hands just to make sure, per our rules, we're going to adhere to them. Everyone has an opportunity, but I'll come back to you for the motion. Commissioner Ashcraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Trent, have you ever heard of the Rashomon effect? Rashomon effect is the term that describes how a group of people can participate in the same event but see it very differently. And this has been a very good exercise in the event that occurred in the executive session and our collective versus our individual recognitions. And while I did not read all 621 pages, I confess, I did read the responses from my peers. And I have to agree with Commissioner Myers. There are just so many executive sessions that remembering exactly what happened at any particular one sometimes gets confused. So my reflections on several of the items did seem to mirror my fellows, but one in particular, and one that you have on page 2, the second or third paragraph, where you state, based on your reading of it, while brief references were made to the countywide pay table and market adjustments, all such references were made for the purpose of evaluating Ms. Post Oak Ferguson's salary adjustment and proposed amendment to her contract. That's not how I remember it. The references to the county manager, to the county attorney, and to the county auditor, based on my recollection, were incidental. And I put that in my response, that most of the conversation, which is what struck me as odd, were in the retelling and reformatting of the pay adjustment system. And so I struggle with that passage. And then on page 3, the first full paragraph, where you say this motion accurately reflects the discussion of the board during the executive session. I'm sorry, I'm not there.
And Chair, if I may address, and as you know, since I have started as your chief counsel, I make sure I do a PowerPoint to understand that we stay on talking points and on topic when we go back in executive session. At that point, I make sure I review those, that we are not straying off topic. In this particular case, as I indicated in the response, I reviewed the slides that dealt with what could be said, removed what I felt you cannot talk about, and what was talked about. My understanding, you went back there just for a few minutes. Most of it was focused on each of those, where it went through those slides is what I can collectively determine. But what I can't say is I wasn't back there other than to start the slideshow of what some of the comments may have been. I will indicate that from all of you, it appears that it was a discussion about salary compensation, which is an area of your employees to go back. So it wasn't about how the pay tables were come, about how that was derived. This was specifically geared towards your employees, and that's where, I see the KOMA issue. Did it comply? And the answer from me and from the legal department is it did. Now, that's up to the AG to see it. Now, is this I know that Commissioner Fass raised issues. Why was this brought up now? With certain employees at a different time coming up for review for merit and market. I know that there were different views of what was discussed in June 22nd meeting, and that, you're right, that's not uncommon. People are going to have different recollections. But the reason we do PowerPoints, and I do that, is to make sure you stay on topic and we don't stray.
Commissioner Fass.
Yes, I have, if you read my statement, it's different than yours. One, I said in my statement, we were discussing policy. We were not reviewing the county manager. There wasn't anything personal to the county manager. For one, the deputy county manager was in the meeting. We have never had the deputy county manager when we're reviewing salary, talking specifically about the county manager. You weren't in the meeting, and you wrote up your letter before you reviewed all of ours. One commissioner said that you were in the meeting. And so that means, our statements, you look at them and you're like, were we all in the same meeting? So, for me, you just watch what's happening in national news. We have legal risk. We have risk as a board. You're representing the government's position. But I also have legal risk and could be, subpoenaed. I could have to testify. And my statement doesn't connect with your statement. And so, there's just no way I can vote and approve your statement when you don't, when our statements, don't agree with each other. And I had asked you about, could we add in the motion about moving the board to approve the submission of the joint response, and you agreed that we could, and said you were going to edit the motion, but you didn't. So you
Correct.
no longer agree with that we could say the submission of the response. So then I'm not with my vote, if I get subpoenaed, the AG Kobach will say, well, Becky, you voted and said Peg Trent's response is correct, and now you're saying it's not correct. That gives me, I'm a licensed professional too. I'm under a code of ethics. So there's no way I can vote yes on this, but would you be willing to add those words to the submission like when I talked to you?
Ms. Trent, do you want to address
Yes, if I may address it. That is correct. Commissioner Fass reached out to me the day this came out on Tuesday when it was posted for the public. At that time, we had an extensive conversation walking through the exhibits, because the motion currently, as it is written, indicates that you're adopting approving the joint response along with Exhibit 2 through, is it 12? And the reason we didn't include 1, because that's the statements of everyone that would be included and the news media articles, so that you would not be approving those. The letter, when I spoke to you on the phone, I agree with you. I understand your concerns and why you wanted the language of submittal, and I even agreed. I said I understand, and yes, I could amend it to include that additional language. When I went back and looked at the letter from the AG, and we go back to it, it says from the AG that it's to be approved. if you amend it, it's fine, but what you've done is you've now potentially, for the others who may agree with that position, saying that they didn't, kind of like a little skateboard, that you didn't approve it, so hence that doesn't count, and then we have all these different statements. And even though I'm not getting in because I was not back there, the statement addresses what I am able to see from what I know that I prepared in those slides, what I know that happened with training, what was given in the motion, what was done in the employment agreement, all of that, I can put that together, that this is compensation. I prepared that response without looking at your statements until the end, because I wanted to make sure I was factual in the way that I looked at it and giving it to the AG. At the end, we looked at your statements, and I didn't change anything because I had actually said some of the same things that I felt all of you had captured independent of reading your statements. I can't help that you have different, and like you made the analogy, which was great, like an automobile accident, you're looking at it at each vantage point and what you're focused on when you came into the meeting. And so at this point, I'm looking at when you walked into the meeting, the reason you went in on the motion, what the slides were said, what I can tell what would have been addressed, and you were talking about compensation of your employees. And as to who's present in the room, even in your charter, your resolution, I included in the footnote that the county manager has a right to be present in those meetings, and the only time, there's only an exception that she would not be present, one in a certain situation, and she can pull in the county manager, anyone she so desires. In this case, I put in the response that the deputy county manager serves in overseeing finance, budget, I believe budget, and which is Brent Christensen, as well as who's doing interim HR, and also, I'm drawing a blank right now, the other department that was involved in this. So that's HR. So that's why, with the market study and what was brought forward. So at this point, you didn't discuss performance because this was a market study, not about performance. And there's two to deal with market and performance.
Commissioner Myers?
Thank you, Chair. And it has been accurately stated, as I stated in my questionnaire, that I don't procrastinate on. I answered that questionnaire as quickly as I could. I did not recall quite a bit of the information, but one of the other questions that I answered, and again, being truthful in answering these questions, it's not difficult for me, but I answered and said, I've never walked out of an executive session feeling like we've ever violated KOMA. And I still stand by that. And now, after reading all the information that's been provided through this process, my recollection is clearly not word for word, because it's difficult, again, for me to remember exactly what was and how it was discussed, but I agree with the information that's being presented, that's asking us to vote on. So I have a different view from a couple of the other commissioners here, but I have never felt that we've had a violation of KOMA in our executive session meetings.
Commissioner Allenbrand?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I feel the same way. I can tell you that I filled that questionnaire out by myself. I did not meet with any other commissioner, nor did I meet with the chair. So I answered it to the best of my ability. I did ask for the clerk to pull some records for me and had some information pulled. And then I went back because I couldn't find my training book to make sure I had all the dates right. So I just didn't want to do anything wrong. So I don't know if we're through discussing. Can we call the question, or
We don't even have a motion on yet.
We need a motion?
Go ahead, Commissioner Hanslick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the board to approve the BOCC joint response and exhibits 2 through 12 to the Kansas Open Meetings Act complaint filed with the Kansas Attorney General regarding the June 29th, 2023 executive session.
Allenbrand, second.
Moved by Hanslick, seconded by Allenbrand. I support this for several reasons. Number one, it's accurate. Number two, I appreciate that we've been transparent in the process. We have been. We came out in full force with the transparency, with the release on this statement, and have been transparent since the very beginning of the investigation. Additionally, I want to make sure that we don't give any avenue for any potential findings or additional investigation in the cost and time aspect that it would take for additional investigation if we don't adhere to what's been requested by the Attorney General's office. So by saying that we approve this, I think that's what was required, and therefore I support that. We may have different opinions on best practices. Clearly we do. And that's okay. I hope that we would have the opportunity to discuss those internally and not spend the taxpayers' time and resource on the investigations of the legal aspects of this. And that's the key point, that this is about the legality, not about best practices, which we can continue to discuss. But in terms of the legal representations that are made in this statement, they are wholly accurate and appropriate, and I support them. Commissioner Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I respect your assertion. I am just struggling with the phrase that while brief references were made to the pay table, I'm sorry, that's just not my recollection. So my vote will reflect that concern.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Thank you. I appreciate the conversation, and I think maybe the part of the issue is how you interpret the word approve. I interpret that as meaning that we agree that there has been an appropriate response, a thorough response, and that I don't read that to mean I agree with every single statement that's been made by anybody in that report. That's how I look at it. I don't know if that helps anyone else, but approve to me doesn't necessarily mean agree.
Commissioner Fast.
Yes, and, thank you for all your work on this. I know
You're very welcome.
I know.
And my department and Linda, their staff,
Yeah, all of
everybody.
you. I mean,
pull this together was a lot of staff time. So I appreciate you
and
acknowledging
the
that.
uploads like that, I do them for my job.
Right.
That is not a quick process.
And we also bate stamped it to make it easier in the response. So I appreciate you acknowledging that. That means a great deal.
I just want to say too, because, I'll be a no vote, that first of all, and I know that's not, it's way the letter's written. I've read it 10 times. I've had legal friends write it, and every lawyer I know has given me a different advice. So I don't feel like I should be asked to vote. That's your legal opinion. What is standard? We would submit ours, and you submit your legal opinion. You represent the government. I'm an individually elected representing my district, but also I practice within my scope of practice. My scope of practice is not to determine what the government's position, whether the government was right or wrong. The one thing I will remember I took 2 AG housed classes. I took a class from Derek Schmidt, and they said, when in doubt, step out, And so, no, I didn't say it right. I wrote it down, sorry. If in doubt, sit it out. If there's a conflict at all of perception. So if in doubt, sit it out. I will be voting no.
Okay. I understand.
Second, would the clerk call the roll?
Commissioner Fast.
No.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, aye.
Commissioner O'Hara.
No.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick, aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
No.
Commissioner Allenbrand.
Allenbrand, aye.
And Chairman Kelly.
Aye. 4 votes in favor, 3 against. Is that consistent with your count?
That is correct.
Okay. We are on to what was number 12. Rachel Mested from Corrections is here regarding the budget for carryover reimbursement to Corrections. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Now, I apologize. I appreciate that you provided us a thorough report during agenda review. Is there anything further you'd like to address with us on this?
Yes, so Rachel Mested with the Department of Corrections, and no, there is not.
Okay. Questions, for Ms. Mested? Seeing none, how about a motion? Commissioner Hanslick.
Thank you, sir. I move to authorize the Johnson County Department of Corrections State FY 2024 Community Corrections Carryover Budget Plan for submission to the Kansas Department of Corrections as approved by the Community Corrections Advisory Board in the amount of $274,189.98.
Myers, second.
Moved by Commissioner Hanslick, seconded by Commissioner Myers. Seeing no questions or comments, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Commissioner Fast.
Aye.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, aye.
Commissioner O'Hara.
Yes.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick, aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Allenbrand.
Allenbrand, aye.
And Chairman Kelly.
Aye, 7 votes in favor, none against. That's consistent with your count.
That is correct.
Would have been a great candidate for consent agenda, but thank you for coming nonetheless. All right, on to managers' reports from Penny Post Oak Ferguson.
Chairman and Commissioners, thank you. Good afternoon. 2 quick items. The first is the 2023 Live Well, Age Well Expo. Takes place Thursday, September 7th from 10 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. at Johnson County Arts and Heritage Center. Live Well, Age Well will feature a vendor fair with more than 50 private businesses, health organizations, community partners, and other service providers. The focus is keeping aging adults healthy, independent, and well-connected in Johnson County. The webpage with additional information was included in the manager's memo. The second item is recognition, once again, for Tomahawk Creek Project. Susan was here, I think she had to leave. So I'm happy to share that the Tomahawk Creek Project was just named the Engineering News Record, or ENR, Midwest Best Project for Water and Environment. 2 panels of judges selected 29 winners in 18 categories, projects that represent outstanding quality of work, spurred innovative ideas, and overcame intriguing challenges, and that we did in this project. The link to the article with additional information is included in the memo, and with that, Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. That's a
welcome.
very big deal, that ENR award, so congratulations to Susan and her team. With that, we'll move to commissioners' comments. Commissioner Fast?
Yeah, I forgot last week to talk about that I attended the Kansas Housing Conference. It was just really excellent. Our JCPRD, Friends of JCPRD Housing had a presentation, and they were one of the finalists for what they do with gardening at their houses. They opened up a new open house this weekend I went to on Saturday. I also got to speak during the eviction session. One of the chief judges asked me to speak what we're doing and what we've been working on, what I've been working on with our judges. And they had in that session and some issues, our eviction laws from the 1960s. It's really expedited process. And so there's not time, like if somebody needs support with mental health, or if we have rental assistance. So I've met with Mark Knapp and, we'll start meeting with some senators to see about their thoughts. Is there room to do some modernization of that 1960s eviction law? So you might be hearing more from me.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Myers?
No report.
Commissioner O'Hara?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Tuesday, I was at Gardner and on the airport planning area, and one of my concerns is the hazardous materials designation. There's low, medium, and high, I believe, and I was told that there was policy, and I've gone out to look for that, and I could not find it, and I'm looking to staff to give me some particulars on that. I think with nanoparticles, especially with Sanano being out at the airport, that we need to understand this, because my understanding is that the EU has some very strict guidelines, because in nanoparticles, once they get into the environment, they're impossible to clean up. So we just have a lot of things to think about that. Also, Tuesday I was at Bible study at the Juvenile Corrections Juvenile Detention Center, and as always, it was a delightful time. Ron Stiles is an amazing person. He started this after his son after his son died from a football injury in Spring Hill, and I'm telling you, it is a true blessing to the community. So that's it.
Very good. Commissioner Hanslick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just would mention that the Johnson County Library Foundation is having its annual fundraiser on Saturday, September 23rd, called Library Lets Loose. And it raises a lot of money to provide extra services that are not in our library budget. One of the examples is the, oh my gosh, I can't think of the name, where you can download your old pictures and things like that. That is completely paid for, staffed by volunteers. So it's always a lot of fun, and encourage people to buy a ticket and come on out.
Very good. Commissioner Ashcraft.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I've asked from time to time about an after-action report on COVID, and staff was able to provide, I'm going to guess, all commissioners a SWOT analysis related to the COVID event 3 weeks ago. And I'm sorry, I had a medical issue, and other things have kind of delayed my response. I wanted to thank staff for doing that. And from my vantage point, COVID has been the most significant public policy issue that we have ever faced. I mean, it's been more significant than our annual budget. And I know there's a lot of effort and anxiety, but COVID was, let us pray, once in a lifetime event. But the reality of it is it may not be. It also, I would think, provides some lessons learned. And I wanted to ask Mr. Chairman if we could schedule a COW to present the after-action report or the SWOT analysis that was done and discuss it. I have a number of questions, but I think it's important to get those issues out, because if for some reason, hopefully it won't be a contagious disease, but events of such a magnitude that need a collective community, an intergovernmental response, we have lessons learned and maybe some improvements we have realized or may need to continue to work on. So I wanted to ask if that could be scheduled. It's not necessarily a high priority, but while we have personnel like Mr. Waters before he sails off into the sunset, but people who have the expertise that help lead us through this are present and can have those discussions and those insights, I would encourage us to have it sometime before Joe leaves. And I'm not putting an onus on Joe Waters. He was just a player, but before key personnel like Joe Waters leaves. So that's a request, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Allenbrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm gonna keep this quick, but, and I'll save some stuff for next week, but I do want to remind everybody this weekend is DeSoto Days, and then the following weekend is Old Settler Days. So I'm sure that Square House lawn is going to be completed. I also put down here COVID, just because I've heard several comments about it. I mean, it was the charge of the commission and the staff here to, everybody has the right to get shots or not get shots. I prefer to have the shots. So the whole goal was to get enough stations put together to get that done quickly, and we actually were the first one, I think it was in the United States, that we were able to get people vaccinated as quickly as we could. And that was something that we did a mission for, and that was that roundtable discussion and finding out. And so, COVID is here. I was one of, I think there was a total of 6 of us in here that was exposed to COVID, and I hadn't had it before, and I don't really want it again. But I think it's something that we're going to be faced with. I choose that if I get COVID, or if I have the flu, or if I have a cough, I'm going to wear a mask, or I might go on Zoom. So it's just difference of opinion. So I want to, all the emails I've been getting on COVID, it is here, and we're going to get it. It's just part of what's out there, and there has been a huge spike. But again, I feel like it's the respect of others, just like if you have the flu or something that's contagious, to, wear a mask or maybe go Zoom to not expose other people. So, Mr. Chair, that's my comments.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the staff again for the budget presentation, the work, and all the commissioners for their work on that. One of the things I want to encourage us to do, and Commissioner Myers mentioned it in past weeks, is we need to work together. And we need to have an opportunity for good communication with each other to be able to do that work. That can't just be here on this dais. And so again, I will welcome that my door is open. I'm willing to have meetings with anybody who's willing to meet with me, to have substantive discussions on how we can move this county forward in a way that's best for all residents of Johnson County. And we have to do the work. We need to come up with policy level recommendations and really focus on substantive issues, not just focus on the political hot buttons of the day, but actually get into the substance and do the work that we're elected to do. I look forward to continuing to do that and invite all to join me in that. I do want to say a special thank you to all union members. Labor Day is Monday. I appreciate the work that the unions have done to promote fair wages, to have safe conditions on projects, and to make sure that we can have rewarding work environments for all in our country, especially the hands that build it. I hope that we continue to build a rewarding work environment for those who work here in Johnson County. With that, all business accomplished, we are adjourned. I'd ask the clerk to go ahead and change the tapes, and we'll do a brief agenda review. Thank you all very much.